Not like the nuke pukes of the world would like to put forth. I just wanted to touch base and make a little video about nuclear experimentation because it's the 40th anniversary of 3 Mile Island. Let me read to you a definition, not the definition of fascism, but a definition of fascism. This one happens to be, I find, incomplete. Something I've noticed that is very Orwellian, and again, this I noticed over a decade ago when I wrote my first book, The Complete Patriot's Guide to Oligarchical Collectivism, and it was one of the original points of inspiration to write that book, that language is being belittled, and not only is language being belittled, but definitions are being shrunk, which is leading to vocabulary also shrinking. All right, so I mean, if you look at a definition of fascism from a recent dictionary, it's stunning compared to this one. Definition of fascism: any program for setting up a centralized autocratic national regime with severely nationalistic policies, regimentation of industry, commerce, and finance, rigid censorship, and forcible suppression of opposition. Now, if anyone knows, happens to be from the New Collegiate Dictionary, based on Webster's New International Dictionary, 2nd edition, copyright 1956. Any program, I'll say it again, any program for setting up a centralized, autocratic national regime with severely nationalistic policies, exercising regimentation of industry, commerce, and finance, rigid censorship, and forcible suppression of opposition. All right, so if anyone knows anything about the nuclear experimentation industry, you're going to be able to take that definition and apply it to the modality in which the nuclear experimentation industry exists, right? So nuclear is the very definition of fascism. It is part and parcel of the military-industrial complex, and it is run by dreamy bourgeois oligarchs who want to manipulate and steer people into the most costly steam, water boiling energy production ever undertaken by man, producing waste that sits in the reactor's fuel pools. The fuel pools which were designed to hold X amount of spent fuel rods are now holding many times their original purpose. So San Onofre is a nuclear power plant in California that just shut down, but the nuclear fuel pool there is filled with spent rods, and it was originally designed to hold a certain amount of rods, and then more rods were put in because of certain oligarchical fashioning by the government, which made it so the rods would have to stay on site, which the way that all of the nuclear experimentation industry all around the world is storing their waste is underground. They're storing their waste underground in facilities that they can't reach if, and actually due to timeline of tens of thousands of years when something goes wrong. The way that they should be disposing, quote unquote, or holding waste should be above ground storage facilities in dry casks that are reachable and not near water, rivers and oceans and so forth. So if you look at how the nuclear experimentation industry runs, it runs exactly to the letter of fascism, except to the nth degree, because they are poisoning the planet in time scale that people can't really contemplate. And so 40 years later, after 3 Mile Island, nothing has changed except the nuclear experimentation industry has expanded. The one good thing that came out of 3 Mile Island was awareness and curiosity of said nuclear experimentation industry. And this led to a couple of college journalists finding out that indeed the 3 Mile Island meltdown was not the first meltdown in the United States, that there were other meltdowns, several of them, in fact, in the Los Angeles area, where in Santa Susana, where they were experimenting with who knows what, and literally shooting barrels of waste to ignite the waste. And they also did this off the Farallones Island off of Marin in San Francisco. So the waste procedures that are conducted, even when they're not secreted, which actually brings to question, just a couple of weeks ago, there was a secreted waste shipment to the protested waste site in Nevada, and the government secreted a bunch of waste into the site, which their plans for this site include the evolution of our current thinking to be able to invent systems of problem solving that are no longer, that have not been invented yet. So the modality in which they're storing waste at the Nevada site is dependent on our evolution or inventiveness to problem solve situations we haven't really looked at. So basically, it's a shit show of the most oligarchical extreme. And let's see. That's what I wanted to get. Celebrating the secreted information of the nuclear experiment industry worldwide, and pointing to some of the developments. One thing that is a recent development is a deal where, oh man, this goes to why would the United States, not America, the United States, let one of the journalists that was living here be chopped up by a bunch of axe murderers working for the most psychopathic monotheist, arguably, on the planet. Saudi Arabia is about to start, I think it's a 6-reactor deal, multiple reactor deal via the United States. So while the rest of the world is closing down their nuclear experimentation facilities because they realize how deadly and ending the nuclear experimentation, the whole experiment is. And I call it nuclear experimentation because that's what it is. It's an experiment. Don't let them get it twisted that they know what they're doing. The whole modality of the nuclear experimentation industry connected with government like this, right, is fascism and based on waiting for inventiveness to solve the problem that we haven't figured out how to deal with yet. So, 3 Mile Island, year 40. Cancer rates in that area indicate that there indeed was a release of radiation. They usually only measure cesium, but along with cesium is all sorts of other elements. And so, yeah, why would the United States allow one of its journalists to be murdered by the most psychopathic monotheist on the planet? Nuclear experimentation. The most oligarchical, fascist undertaking ever imagined. So, I just wanted to share that. I hope my excitement or compassion for humanity didn't come through as too much for folks, but this subject is of utmost importance. And actually, if it is addressed, it will unite humanity, because radiation is not racist. Radiation is not nationalistic. It knows no boundaries. It goes all across biology. It's bound to impact everything, all life. And if anyone has any pride left for their heritage, then you should be against nuclear experimentation, because it destroys your DNA. All the history and development of all life on the planet, it destroys. So, unite against the institution that mines, refines, and burns, just like the petrolithic institutions, and portends that it is quote-unquote green or an alternative. It's not an alternative. It's exactly the same modality, where it's an oligarchically controlled mine, refine, burn experiment of the worst sort. So, peace on earth. I just wanted to get this information out there. 40 years after the 3 Mile Island industry, 3 Mile Island meltdown or partial meltdown, we have Japan in a whole secrecy regime because of Fukushima. We have Saudi Arabia developing nuclear power plants for really one reason. The only reason that nuclear power plants function today is to utilize the process to develop weaponized grade material, right? This is a complexity of the nuclear experiment that also is secreted or at least belittled in sharing the information of that the process of the nuclear experimentation for power generation leads to material used for weaponization. So that's it. Nuclear experimentation is fascism to the letter. Check the definition if you want to see some Orwellian hints. I'm going to break out. I hope you'll listen to this important information. Peace.
Terrorist, terrorist, journalist, terrorist, journalist, terrorist, journalist, terrorist, journalist, terrorist, 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 journalist, terrorist, journalist,